What's funny about this conversation about gender is that it's not something I think about that much in relation to Homoko, either from the products or the way the brand is marketed.
We're the Majority Group, and this is Style as Identity, where we profile the designers and founders whose mere existence shifts our understanding of the style status quo. We're your hosts. I'm Lola Catero.
And I'm Frankie Ikwuazom.
And after years of settling for style that didn't represent us,
we set out to find the brands that did. Join us each episode as we learn from brands that are an extension of their values, identity, and aesthetic. And because of them, we're seen and represented. Whether you're on Fire Island or home on the couch, to us, Hamoko is the go-to brand for embodying summer fun. Hamoko's collection of versatile tops and power bottoms enable queers and their friends to show up and show out in responsibly made fits. And where some brands prioritize growth, Hamoko invests their marketing budget within the queer community through collaborations and giving back.
Who is this dreamboat behind Hamoko? Daniel DuGoff, one of the most thoughtful, open designers we've met. Our discussions with him expand our thinking, and we can't wait for you to learn with us as we chat with Daniel today. Now, in both fashion and the queer community, a lot is coded by gender. And we wanted Daniel's approach to building a brand within these constructs and how he uses style to affirm our identities. Since this conversation is based on visual subject matter, we created a little guide to share with you. Text HOMOCO, that's HOMOCO, to us at the number 833-495-4773 to get it.
Should we do it?
Let's get into it.
Daniel, hi.
Hi there.
So happy you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let's get into it.
All right. So the media refers to Hamoko in so many different ways in reference to gender. And now that we have you, the source here, we were wondering, how do you describe Hamoko in an industry like fashion, where the terminology is so coded by gender?
Yeah, so I refer to Hamoko as a brand for queer people and their friends, and I'm really careful not to use gendered language around the products and around the brand. But of course, media has to define who the audience is, but all media has its own particular audience. So the way that I've generally handled it is I explain that to whoever I'm talking to, and then they interpret it for how it is to be consumed in their sphere. So if I'm talking to a queer publication, they might use non-gendered or unisex language, where if I'm talking to a menswear magazine, they'll definitely call it menswear and swim. But I sort of don't think in those terms. It's more of what fits this audience. What clothes can the broadest group of people in this audience wear? And that's what I try and make.
That comes across in your imagery, in your e-com. When I go and I'm looking at a shirt, I see it on all different types of people and body sizes and shapes. And
the website is divided by product type. It's if you want a brief, you probably are a certain body type and you're going to go in that direction. So how do I get a customer there quickly? Or if you want a t-shirt or a camp shirt, that's easier and more forgiving for all sorts of shapes. It's often a different customer, and how do you get there as quickly as possible without using men's and women's terminology? But it's how do you explain sizing? It's such a clusterfuck of what the standard is. And unfortunately, this is the one place where I feel I haven't figured it out yet.
Because nobody has.
I basically use men's sizing because most people have had the experience of buying a unisex, American Apparel.
Unisex is just men's.
Yeah, unisex is men's. And the way to describe a elastic swim trunk fit is what size jeans do you wear? If you wear this range, get an extra small. If you wear this range, get a medium. And it's not the best solution, but it's the thing that most people understand. Men would never understand if you had it in women's sizing. But for the most part, women will understand. Oh yeah, I wear this size jean, and that's equivalent to this in a men's jean, and I can get that size.
Well, and I think the part that also layered on it is challenging is size and fit are really different. For 80% of my clothes, I want the fit to be baggy. And for 20%, I want it to be fitted. And that associates with size that we associate with body shape. And there's just a lot too.
Like the brief, which is like a gendered item because it has a pouch in the front for anatomy purposes, is a pretty conservative cut. So I've noticed that people that want like a sexier cut buy like a size or 2 sizes down because then it's just smaller.
Nobody wants a baggy brief? Weird.
Well, it's more of like a full coverage brief. Like I hate when it cuts across the middle of your butt. So it like covers your full butt. But if you want it to cut across the middle of your butt, you can go a size down and then it's much tighter. And that's just like my preference as a designer versus like customer preference.
Yeah.
But all of the products are kind of designed to be agile. Like we're all wearing the camp shirt and the camp shirt is like really boxy. And basically most people I know can wear a small or an extra large and it looks good. And if you're like broader, bigger, and you go to an extra large or double extra large, it's still not going to fit like a tiny little thing.
That is really cool too, because earlier when you were saying for queer people and their friends, and you were talking about how you have your own way of describing Hamoko, but you also kind of give people the reins based on who their community is, who they're talking to, so that they can kind of see themselves in the brand. And then Lola talked about like the marketing and how, size and fit are different, but you go a step further because just from, being a Hamoko customer and also like stalking the brand, it is easy to see myself in the product, not only because of how you've organized the site and the shopping experience, but also because of like who wears it.
It's exciting that you pick up on that because it's like so intentional that the brand imagery is like the same product in different contexts instead of really tightly controlling an editorial lens. I like work with really different photographers and they create wildly different images, but you're seeing the same swim trunk on different groups of friends in different contexts. And you can start to imagine like, oh, my body's kind of like that person, or I'm tall and lanky like that person, or I'm shorter like that person, and they're wearing it. And like seeing it has a 3 3/4 inch inseam, that doesn't mean anything because it's actually about how the rise of it goes around your butt and like how high it comes up on your hips is like actually how that affects the fit. So being able to imagine yourself in it, I think it's hard when any brand just like really controls the images and it's like always on the same type of person, or it's always on like 2 different kinds of people. Like you see in women's
like 2 extremes.
Yeah. There's like super skinny model and size 16. And it's like, well, if I'm size 8, what does it look like on me?
I want to get to more behind the creatives and people you engage to help communicate the brand. But one thing that we're really focused on at the Majority Group is our evolution and our journey in learning and expanding awareness and, hopefully bettering ourselves and how we show up in the world. And the one thing I'm kind of fascinated with is you are so thoughtful in these ways that us as the consumer, like we see, but then we also don't see it all. And when we get to those juicy bits in a minute, I'd love to hear about your journey to thoughtfulness. I mean, obviously you were probably thoughtful from in the womb, but but you had a brand previously, DuGoff. It was menswear. And I'd love to have you share about your journey and how your notions of gender have evolved to inform what is now Hamoko today.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is opportunistic. And it was that I had this brand for 5 years before Hamoko existed. And it was a wholesale brand so I was selling to stores that were then selling to customers. And I had a little bit of sales online, but it was mostly going to trade shows and hoping that the buyer communicated to the store staff the story that I was telling them. And like that never happened. And it was expensive because I was buying amazing Japanese and Italian fabrics and producing it in New York City. And it was just very expensive product. So the really fun, exciting pieces were too risky because it was so expensive. Nobody was going to buy the insane print on a $400 shirt.
Wish I could.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could, but I felt terrible even like selling it to my friends because it was like, I can't afford this. Like, how are my friends going to afford this? So part of the exercise of like rethinking that brand that became Hamoko was, how do I do the thing that I love in DuGoff, which was color and print and really cool textiles in a way that people can afford. And then once I figured out what that product was, which was this sort of swim summer printed thing, it became who's the audience that buys that, or who's an underserved audience that would buy that. And I was thinking about how one of the things with DuGoff that I always wanted to do but couldn't was say that it was queer because it was so expensive. Any customer that I got, I had to hold on to, and I didn't want to alienate anybody by saying this is for this guy, not that guy, and selling to stores in other countries and selling to stores in the South or selling to stores in conservative towns. Like it's just, and not telling that story directly to the customer, relying on the store to tell the story. It's like so many layers of telephone. So it became, for Homoko, it was like, okay, I want to make swimwear that's really colorful. Who can buy that? Who wants to buy that? Who isn't being sold that? And I was thinking about how companies that sell things to queer people either do it through sex sells, smutty, usually cheap things, or trying to have some sort of grand aspiration of like extreme wealth lifestyle. But there didn't seem to be brands that were talking to like normal queer people that like are cool and want nice stuff. But the statement is like, this is a queer brand, not this is what you wear to have sex, or this is what you wear at like the white party.
Or you buy during Pride Month.
Right.
Something that I love when you said, oh, thinking about DuGoff, and you're like, my friends aren't going to wear this. Like, I don't want to sell this to my friends. Like that line of thinking of like, what do my friends want to wear? I think transfers really well to the accessibility of Homoko as a brand, which you were like, people like us, like just living our lives. Like we don't need a sticker on our forehead that says, you know, like I'm a queer person, I need clothes for queer people. It's like, well, yes, I need clothes, but it's because like I'm me and I'm human. And I like that kind of comes out.
And how does a brand have an attitude that is queer without it being embarrassing? Without it being like Target does Pride Month.
Right. Like exploiting the community.
One of the things that I often say in these kinds of interview contexts, and it's like every time I say it, I'm like, don't say that. Is that like, there's nothing queer about the product. It's just good clothes that are made responsibly and fit and last. But
what about the style?
But the brand and how it's sold and marketed and how I think I engage with a customer is like deeply queer. And then the financial structure of the whole thing of like who I invest in and how.
I mean, I think that's interesting. It brings up this whole question of like, are there queer clothes? What makes a product queer?
I mean, there are definitely clothes that like people in the queer community need. Binders and gaffs and jock straps. There's sort of like a undergarment underpinning world that is like deeply queer and personal, but that's not really what Homoko is about. Homoko is about like, how do you express the fun of like being a part of this community with color and print in a way that is both like very queer, but also like somebody outside of the community will want to be a part of it because there's some authenticity in it being real.
I guess I just still feel like the founder's queer, the people that you engage with, the money from the brand, it stays within the queer community.
Totally. If I white labeled or private labeled any of the products in a different print or color, it's not like that's a gay bathing suit. That's a queer print on a really great bathing suit sold by a company that cares about this community and puts money back into it and works with queer photographers and models.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think that that's kind of the funny magic sauce of it all is that like it shouldn't be revolutionary. It's just talk to people like they're human. And this is sort of I think we'll get into this more, but like the brand guideline is it's fun, not sexy. And like sexy can be a part of fun. But like if you just talk about like queer people at the beach with their friends having a great time, it's a very different image than what we expect from a queer brand.
Let's get into it now. I feel like both from the prints themselves, I mean, you can't see us, but we're all wearing the prints and the room is loud. It's very fun. So like from the prints, in the style all the way to, you talked about showing them at the beach having fun, showing us having fun, and even marketing, like bright colors, smiles. Like there's a lot of energy and overall like warmth. So, I mean, it sounds like that was intentional, but I'd love to just talk more about like how that goes from what you do to what we see.
Totally intentional. And it's because of that missing middle between smut and exclusivity. What's the community actually doing? Hanging out. And like you're with people you love and you're inspired by this like chosen family that you've built in your adult life. And like, what does that look like? And that's exciting to show. That's the brief that I have to every photographer that I work with is like, don't imagine the underwear or swim ad that you have in your head when you're shooting this campaign. Like imagine what it's like hanging out with your best friend.
For the photographers that you work with, you give them a brief, right? So you're like, hey, this is who we are. But we did mention earlier about how like when you look at the way Hamoko is represented in a lot of different marketing, like it still has this like almost spectrum of like differences. It almost feels like you're going through different rooms in one house. Each room has its own style and personality. So like, how do you give them those reins while still making sure it's like part of the Hamoko DNA?
I think it always feels like it's from the same family.
Yeah.
Because the prints are really strong. And like whether it's shot on Polaroids or 35 millimeter or like really crisp e-com lighting, like the print is the icon. But I really try to work with very different photographers that have like different styles and points of view, because I think what you said at the beginning, what's helpful from a customer standpoint is to be able to see yourself represented. So rather than focus on casting, I focus a lot on photographers. And then the photographers are often the ones doing the casting, and it's often their friends because those are the people that you can get a group of people to show up to set and have a good time together. But it's also like this photographer is really into this drag scene in this place. So like, let's look at that. And then this photographer is in like LA and is like super community organizing based. Like, what do those friends look like? That's how the marketing starts to like show the different aspects of the queer community, because it's not focused on any one niche body type or any one niche queer subgenre community. It's what unites us all.
What I find kind of mind-boggling about that and profound is it is so powerful, and it seems like a no-brainer. Like the brand really becomes the community, but I've never seen like any brand do that before.
I don't think most brands are willing to relinquish that much control, because like the image is so, and one of the most expensive thing any brand does is hire photographers and models. So the idea of like relinquishing that is terrifying.
It's a source of power.
But I did that for 5 years for a different brand where I shot lookbooks and like creative directed and made props the week before and cast models and worked with usually the same photographer, but sometimes different photographers. And looking back on it after 5 years, it was like, this is all one perspective of how you can wear these clothes. But that's not what Homoko is about. Homoko is about like, how do you get the widest spectrum of people in these clothes? I can't cast that, but I can find people who can find more people.
And it's really smart too. I love what Lola's saying. I love what you're saying too, Daniel, because when Lola and I were catching up a while ago, we were both kind of like, there are some brands where you're like, this is a one-person show. Like you do a lot on your own, and respect, like it's amazing. And I mean this as a compliment. You can't really tell it's just you, because it feels like it's represented by like something that's got to at least be like a committee or like a group of people. So I think that your approach to that kind of gives off.
I'm glad it looks like that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like toiling away in a room in Brooklyn, and sometimes it's like, is this consistent, or does this feel like, I mean, I'm always ignoring something. If I remember to do bookkeeping, I'm not doing marketing emails. And if I'm like not doing that, then I haven't done inventory in months. Like there's always a part of the business that's not getting attention. So the fear is that the voice or the goal isn't shining through.
But it does. It's like your core beliefs, but you're like, oh, it's not just my voice that made this happen, that I'm the community I'm part of. And that's what feels so strong about it and different.
I've had these 4 tenants basically since the beginning of the brand, if not like day one, like very early days, because I needed to have something that guided the decision making for all of the parts of the brand. And it was that the product had to be sustainably and responsibly sourced. It had to be accessible to the community, which is both like sizing and price. That collaboration was going to be a part of it in some way, from like turning over the reins of marketing to photographers and just seeing what they created to working with artists to develop prints. And it was that there had to be give back, that the money that the company made, like, yes, we're hiring queer photographers and artists, but like there should be organizations that benefit from the work that we're doing. And it kind of felt that like having those 4 tenants behind the scenes that are like responsible, but like kind of boring, they're not fun, meant that the product could be like super wild and fun. Because what I could show was like just the best time ever, because I knew behind the scenes everything was like as buttoned up and correct as possible.
Yeah. It's criteria.
Yeah. When I'm packing boxes, realizing that I haven't done X, Y, or Z in the studio, or an inbound collab opportunity comes across my inbox, it's like, does it fit these 4 things? Does it make sense?
Yeah. That makes decision making quite easy, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's like having an executive board, but it's just like 4 things I decided. Well, that product there's no real way to get that plastic right, so we shouldn't make those sunglasses. Like, that's not us.
What I love about that too is like you have your non-negotiables, but then you talked about like, and then we can have a great time. It's like we can definitely party as long as we know exactly what we're not willing to, like what has to come. We're not willing to like leave this out.
And I'm not like hammering over trunks are made out of recycled plastic, or the camp shirts are compostable and don't use toxic sludge. But if you dig one layer deeper, it's there. And if you talk to me about it, like it's all there.
I think that makes me, as a consumer, trust you more, because it's almost like I know what comes with the house. Like I know what to expect. And we have this mutual agreement where it's like, I trust Hamoko is doing that hard work, but it doesn't have to be all we talk about. Mm-hmm. But it does make me feel like pretty damn good.
And it doesn't have to be like brown craft paper or crunchy granola.
Well, I think fashion, it's so visual, right? We see the garment and we're like, oh, I like this. And then we're like, how is it made? And then we're like, oh, I like this. And so that layer deep, to your point.
One of the biggest avenues of like getting new customers is through the artist collaborations, because it's a way to like just talk to a customer group that I haven't addressed yet. So what I think is so exciting, though, is when somebody buys an artist collab print product and then comes back a couple weeks later, or a month later, or a year later, and buys other things. Because it's like, oh, this isn't just about the artist collab. This is a brand that makes cool stuff in a way that I respect, and I understand the story, and I'm getting their emails, and I see the give back and the stuff that's going on behind the scenes that makes it exciting.
Makes me feel seen, right?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to go back to is I love hearing about these core tenets, but they're also rooted in this idea of a legacy you're building on. And I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about why summer fun.
Well, there's sort of 2 reasons. One is that I wanted to make printed stuff, colorful stuff, and that's sort of the biggest opportunity in apparel where people take a risk. Is I'm going on a trip. I want to buy something fun. I'm going to Coachella. Like right now, all of the orders are like, can you please ship this before Coachella?
Can you ship this to my Airbnb near Coachella?
Yeah.
India, Coachella Valley.
Because it's like you're peacocking. You want to stand out on the beach and you're wearing a tiny bit of clothing. And like, what's the brightest, most fun thing? So part of the summer fun thing is the opportunity to address that market. But the other is more rooted in history, which is that queer people for generations have gone to semi-remote or remote places outside of cities where in the summer they can escape and be themselves. And in New York, we have Fire Island, which is like at the edge of the universe because it's at the edge of the universe. It's a place where you took a train to a ferry and then your boss wasn't going to be there and you could hold hands with your boyfriend, and it was just a place where the community could be free. And it's the same thing with Provincetown in Boston. And it's the same thing with Rehoboth Beach in Philadelphia, DC, Baltimore. And it's the same thing with Palm Springs, which is like one of my favorite stories is that when movie stars were on contract, they weren't allowed to leave a radius of Los Angeles because they had to be able to get back to LA and film whenever the studio told them to. And Palm Springs is like within a 2-mile, like so close to the edge of that radius. So movie stars would go to Palm Springs because it was secluded and they could be themselves and the paparazzi weren't there taking pictures of them. And there are towns across the country that have these little queer histories. And so much of it is around the summer. It's about vacation and taking time off and like being away from work. But I also see that as sort of the beginning of HOMOCO. And like, we need to get beyond the summer and we need to bring that freedom that you have on vacation back to real life because it's a different time now, but also celebrate it because it's such a special thing that there are these places.
I mean, I think any of your images, it's about, I see and I feel the safety and the freedom in that. And I think we just think that that's the vibe of the brand, but it's rooted in this thing that's quite serious, right?
Yeah.
And what a wonderful journey to, at least for some of us, to feel that now in our lives. There was so much we covered. I'm going to be marinating on this forever, as I have been for a fan of the brand, and I always learn new things. And so thank you for this. I think what sticks out to me is with media, you don't control the gender narrative. You invite people to receive Hamoko in the way that they receive it and interpret it. And I think there's this theme where you also relinquish creative control as long as it doesn't compromise your core beliefs and tenets. And the collaborators you align with, they're all queer and within the community, but they also represent different perspectives and experiences from your own. And like, what a way to beautifully invite others into it and make it more powerful as a result. And so those are kind of the biggest things that I'm like, whoa, like, why aren't we all doing this? I don't know.
I love all that. And for me too, the last part you said about bringing the fun into our everyday lives, I was like, yeah, what we're doing is just trying to be ourselves more often, like as much as we can, because it's kind of the key to like being okay. and again, like Lola said, it's like, yeah, we talked about the fun and we talked about the good time, but it's also rooted in something that's at the end of the day caring for each other and ourselves. And I love it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. This is a really nice conversation.
I would also like to point out that we are 100% queer here, 4 out of 4, and it happened naturally, you know? We weren't like, how can we all get in a room? And I think that that's cool too.
Yeah.
And thank you for your time and thoughtfulness, Daniel. Nice to see you.
Yeah, great to see you.
Let's do this more.
Yeah.
Without the mics.
Great. If you're like us and adding Hamoko to your wardrobe right now, Daniel's got you. Take 20% off your first order. Head over to homoko.co/majority. That's HOMOCO.co/majority. And your discount will be applied at checkout. To get that URL texted to you, message us at the number 833-495-4773.
Thanks for joining us as we explore how gender constructs have impacted what we wear, how we wear it, and who gets to participate. Next up is a convo with Sally Christensen, founder of Argent, on how she has completely changed the women's workwear game. See you next time.